All right, so we got some pretty major breaking news coming out that President Joseph Robinette Biden has decided to basically deploy the last major weapon that we had in our economic arsenal against Russia as they continue their ongoing invasion in Ukraine. So here from Common Dreams with a little bit of the details, good reporting here from Kenny Stansel, who says the Biden administration on Tuesday imposed a ban on U.S. imports of all Russian fossil fuels in response to Moscow's deadly assault on Ukraine. And they say, speaking from the White House, President Joe Biden announced that Russian oil, liquefied natural gas, and coal will no longer be accepted at U.S. ports. And they say, quote, targeting the main artery of Russia's economy, he said, will deal another powerful blow to Putin's war machine. And he says the decision has strong bipartisan support and was made in close consultation with our allies and partners around the world, particularly in Europe, said Biden. And the president acknowledged that the European Union's reliance on fossil fuels, Russian fossil fuels, means that the EU may not be able to move in lockstep with the US, though he said that the bloc is developing a long-term strategy to reduce their dependence on Russian energy. So I got more updated news on exactly what the EU is doing here from CNBC. They say the EU pledges to cut Russian gas imports by 2/3 before the end of the year. So this is fucking absolutely gigantic. I mean, if you go look at a breakdown in terms of, first and foremost, how much of Russia's economy is based on their liquefied natural gas and their oil exports, it's like a massive chunk of their economy. It's like almost half of their GDP. And so with this type of action being taken by the EU, the main area where Russia is exporting their oil and natural gas to, this could have an absolutely massive impact both on the Russian economy, basically taking away who they are largely exporting their fossil fuels to, and also it could have a backlash effect on Western Europe and also the United States, where we are going to be seeing a massive spike in energy costs, everything basically relating to the production of fossil fuels. So pretty major step that's being taken both by the EU and the US right now. Honestly, I think there's a fair debate to have in terms of how effective this is even going to be, or is it worth the costs that are going to be associated with skyrocketing gas prices here in the United States? Is it actually going to, push Vladimir Putin to end this war sooner than it otherwise would have? I don't really know. I guess we're going to see how some of this plays out, but just a little bit more details here. They say, as Reuters reported, Russia is the world's top exporter of crude and oil products combined at around 7 million barrels per day, or 7% of global supply, and such a ban would be unprecedented, turbocharging already sky-high prices and risking inflationary shocks. So again, this is a substantial portion of Russia's economy, and they say before it was officially announced, the possibility of a U.S. ban on Russian fossil fuel imports triggered a weekend surge in crude oil, which is approaching $140 per barrel, its highest level since a July 2008 peak of more than $147, and it's going to go significantly above this. But they say the nationwide average price for a gallon of gas in the U.S. Just rose to an all-time high of $4.20, or $4.17 on Tuesday, breaking the previous record of $4.11. And again, this is going to go up. So it's in all likelihood we could be seeing gallon gas prices of like $5 to $6 per gallon here in the United States. So skyrocketing gas prices, and they say the newly unveiled ban is expected to push prices even higher. And as Reuters noted, JP Morgan predicts oil could hit a record $185 a barrel by the end of 2022 if disruption to Russian exports lasts that long. And they say the president noted that the U.S. is releasing 30 million barrels of oil from the nation's strategic reserves and taking steps to ensure the reliable supply of global energy. And the president also debunked the right-wing myth that his administration's policies are holding back domestic energy production. And Biden boasted that even amid the COVID-19 pandemic, U.S. fossil fuel corporations pumped more oil during his first year in office than they did during his predecessor's first year. So again, this is something that Joe Biden is bragging about, that he has been, dishing out more oil and gas leases on public lands than even Donald Trump did. I don't really think that's something that you should be fucking bragging about, okay? You were the guy who ran on this platform of pretending to believe in climate change, and remind me again exactly what the fuck you've done done to address climate change? Absolutely nothing. I mean, all of the major climate change provisions that were previously a part of Biden's agenda basically got completely eviscerated and shat on by a single millionaire coal baron named Joe Manchin from West Virginia, who has direct ties to the fossil fuel industry and has a direct financial incentive to not allow any action to be taken on climate change. So, again, you're not really doing anything to address the massive issue of climate change that is inevitably going to cause far more destruction than any war that we're talking about right now. And you're escalating the amount that we are drilling for oil. You're escalating the amount that we are using fossil fuels and relying on fossil fuels while completely, failing on the renewable energy side of it, right? It would be one thing if you say, okay, in the short term right now, we need to ramp up supply. We need to escalate this so that we don't have massive inflation on gas prices, as long as you were pairing that up with substantial investments to transition towards renewable energy. But the Biden administration is doing only the ratcheting up of the fossil fuels while not nearly going close to where we actually need to be in renewable energy investments. So again, just a complete failure on that front, but bragging about the fact that he is increasing the amount that we have been drilling. And just as a reminder, the U.S. is already one of, if not the single largest exporter of oil and natural gas. So the natural follow-up question to understanding this reality would be, well, hang on a second. Why the fuck are we exporting our domestically produced oil and natural gas resources that come from the United States? Why are we not just using this for the American people in order to bring those prices down? That would be a fair question. And the answer to that question, for the most part, in a slightly reductive way, is that we allow private corporations to run our entire energy system, okay? We don't have a nationalized energy production and refining and distribution network here in the United States that would have otherwise been able to conduct some sort of a price control in this situation and make sure that prices are kept low. So, this is something that everybody should be focusing on right now. The rise in gas prices is not necessarily a one-to-one correlation with what is happening in Ukraine right now. There's also the Saudi connection that Biden has been trying to work on, right? He's apparently going to be meeting with the Saudi Arabian leadership in order to basically get on his hands and knees and beg them to reduce or to expand the amount that they are releasing oil into the market. So he's going around to all of these different countries, Iran, Venezuela, and Saudi Arabia, and basically begging them to add more to the market. Well, we could have a solution right here domestically if we wanted, if we were just willing to nationalize our energy production, and instead of letting BP and Shell and Exxon price gouge the American people right now, we should actually just nationalize this energy production and lower those costs so that the American people are not having to front basically the cost for these profit margins that we see. So as pointed out by Bernie Sanders here, he says, oil company revenues in the last year: Exxon up 57%, Chevron up 84%, Shell up 49%, BP up 45%. And he says, we cannot allow big oil companies to continue to take advantage of the war in Ukraine and inflation to make huge profits by jacking up gas prices. We need a windfall profits tax. And honestly, again, we need to just fucking nationalize our entire energy system. It's not something that should be considered a commodity for these gigantic fossil fuel companies that have spent decades and decades completely obliterating the environment and destroying the future habitability of the planet. It should not be up to them what the fucking price of gas is right now. And again, this is a tendency that we have seen throughout the entire American economy well before the war in Ukraine. And I've been telling you guys this over and over and over again. All of the evidence, all of the data is showing that the same corporations who are coming out and complaining about labor costs and complaining about inflation and all of this other shit, they are seeing record profits. They are seeing record revenues that have only been going up during the pandemic. Okay, so it's not the case that all of this inflation is just a result of supply chain issues or just a result of increased labor cost or anything like that. The main issue is just capitalism. The main issue is a private ownership of these types of productive capabilities and allowing private corporations to put their profit margins above the well-being of working class Americans who are currently having to front the cost basically to subsidize their profit margins for all of these fossil fuel companies. So this is going to be an absolute disaster if we end up getting up towards $5-6 a gallon for working class people who are much more likely to have to drive to work, who are much more likely to be impacted by those increased gas prices. I mean, we still have a minimum wage in this country that is $7.25 an hour, okay? So you go and work an hour at your job and you might only be able to afford like slightly over 1 gallon of gas in your car, which probably wouldn't even cover the commute to work in the first place. So again, just completely insane that we are allowing these private corporations, that we are allowing authoritarian, theocratic monarchies and for example, Saudi Arabia, to basically try to price gouge us in this moment, to basically try to artificially ratchet up the price of gas and oil right now in order to just increase their profit margin. I mean, this is the real story, more than just even the role that the war in Ukraine is playing on gas prices. I mean, this is the main story. It's capitalism. That's what you should be blaming. That's what you should be angry at. You should be mostly angry at these companies right here. And believe me, they are sitting back and watching Democrats blame Republicans and Republicans blame Democrats for why gas prices are higher. Meanwhile, they're just fucking going behind the scenes and colluding with each other to artificially jack up the prices so that they can take home record revenues. So that's what people need to be focusing on, in my opinion. Another aspect of this that I don't think anybody is really willing to have a conversation about right now, because of how, ramped up the emotions are in this moment. And you just have to take a step back and think about what the long-term implications are going to be to completely isolate Russia economically from the West, from the US dollar, etc. This is going to push them much closer to China. They're already starting to switch over towards things like Union Pay instead of using MasterCard and Visa, which just officially pulled out of Russia due to US sanctions. They are going to become an economic bloc essentially with China, and China is going to step in and start increasing the amount that they are importing their natural gas and oil. And basically you are ceding Russia to this economic bloc that is forming right now between Russia and China. So even if you are a US imperialist, it doesn't even really make sense from that motivation to be doing what we're doing right now. We're completely imploding the Russian economy in a way that is not even necessarily going to force Putin's hand in ending the war, that is going to have backlash effects in terms of how it is economically impacting the West. And on top of that, it might not even be working in putting pressure on the Russian people to oppose Vladimir Putin right now. In fact, it might even have the opposite intended effect of that. So as pointed out by Clint Ehrlich here, who I think has been having some relatively good commentary throughout this entire war, he says the West thinks sanctions are hurting Putin. They have it backwards. His power inside Russia is surging. And he points out that his approval rating, apparently, according to independent polling data, has been going up. It's ratcheted up by 10 points since basically this war began. And a lot of that is because, yes, people in Russia are, there's been a massive crackdown on information sources. People are being thrown in jail for opposing the war. People are being thrown in jail for even reporting on what is actually happening on the ground in Ukraine. So there's a massive disinformation effort led by the Russian government that is, leading to this result. But at the end of the day, our sanctions are just going to give Putin more ammunition to basically tell the Russian people that it's not me that you should blame for being a violent expansionist imperialist. It's the West that you should be blaming, right? It's the West who's trying to hurt you and trying to strangle you and trying to completely destroy your life economically. So, I'm not saying we shouldn't hold Putin accountable. Definitely not saying we shouldn't hold the oligarchs accountable. We absolutely should seize all of their assets, try to impose, targeted sanctions that do hurt the oligarchs, that do go after Putin and his personal wealth. But the reality of what's happening right now is not that. Our sanctions are too broad. They are going to hurt civilians. They are hurting civilians right now. And at the end of the day, it might not even produce the intended result that even the most vehement US imperialists would be asking for. So, again, not saying we shouldn't be punishing Putin or that this isn't necessarily even a good idea. But if you're going to be doing this, do it in the right ways, right? Don't allow U.S. corporations to price gouge and artificially drive up the costs that average working class Americans are having to front that cost to subsidize their profit margins. But that's exactly what Biden is doing, essentially. So, at the end of the day, it's working class Americans and it's working class Russian people that are getting fucked up in this basically, gigantic dick swinging competition between two massive violent imperialist powers.